The world will lie to us and tell us as soon as we have 10K in the bank, 20K in the bank, this X number of dollars in our bank account, well, then all of a sudden we have peace. And I'm telling you right now, that source of peace, if that is your source of peace, it is going to fail you.
Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino Villa. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Maria, you and I say it all the time, words matter.
Yes.
And so often we get questions about emergency fund and putting money aside for like the rainy day and all of that stuff. But we approach that a little bit differently.
Yeah. And it started, probably 4 years ago or so. And I was listening to some podcast somewhere. I don't even remember what it was. But I kind of had this revelation that I don't really want to save for emergencies. And I was like, why is that? And I started to recognize why that was. And I had set aside money for emergencies. But what I was running into, not just for myself, Nino, but for a lot of the clients that I was working with was, hey, as soon as I get that emergency fund funded, something happens. Inevitably, there's an emergency that happens. And so I started to look for patterns. And ultimately, what we ended up talking about was naming our fund something totally different, something that we would actually be interested in funding and be excited to do. And so my husband and I came up with Peace of Mind Fund. And we kind of tried it on for a little while. I tried to, play around with like palm something, to try to shorten it. Nothing really stuck for me, but peace of mind is something that I know I'm actually wanting, and I don't want emergencies in my life. I want peace of mind. And so that's kind of how it all started for us, Nino. And ever since then, it's been really great. So what I've seen is people who, here's the other side of this. When we are trying to save for an emergency, and I think I talked maybe last week or the week before about wants versus needs and how I don't love that language. And This is why, because I said that you can convince yourself that anything is a need if you actually really, really want it. And so this same concept goes with emergencies. You can convince yourself that anything is an emergency if it's something that you really want to happen right now. And so, you might have a flat tire and that could constitute as an actual emergency. But when you go to the tire store and they tell you you need 4 tires, if you've got all of that money in an emergency fund, you might say, well, it's an emergency. I need that, right? And so you start to ask yourself things a little bit differently. When you have a peace of mind fund, you start to ask yourself, will this decision ultimately bring us peace of mind? And that answer makes you spend a lot less, which I know sounds weird, but that totally works.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that you brought this, to the company too. And so that we could kind of share this. I know that for me, between 2013 and 2021, whenever we implemented this, every conversation with a client about the emergency fund inevitably had to be accompanied with a conversation about how do you define an emergency? Because to your point, I'm going to define everything as an emergency. The moment I don't have enough money for the thing that I want to do right now, because I'm not going to exercise delayed gratification, I'm not going to exercise patience. So everything becomes an emergency, including things like gift giving around the holidays or even around birthdays. I'm sorry, those things are coming, so let's just make those part of the plan. Let's stop labeling those an emergency. So for years, I was just in the same conversation. It was the Groundhog Day conversation about emergencies. So when you brought this, and And again, we always talk about how words matter, and it's like, that's right. You're absolutely right. I don't want to save for emergencies. I don't want to draw that to myself, like, oh yeah, another emergency. But I do want peace of mind. And I found that our clients wanted peace of mind. As we started communicating this to our clients about like, hey, we're going to change this. I remember so many people like, yes, right? So peace of mind, and like you said, it really drives that question. The question becomes, will this purchase, will this expense, will this whatever bring us peace of mind? And having that safety net and having that money in savings, does that bring me peace of mind? And so in a few moments, we'll kind of get into like maybe some of the numbers around like how does someone fund a peace of mind fund, and how large should that be and whatnot. But before we do that, I think it's prudent for us to talk about the source of peace, because the world will lie to us and tell us as soon as we have 10K in the bank, 20K in the bank, this X number of dollars in our bank account, well, then all of a sudden we have peace. And I'm telling you right now, that source of peace, if that is your source of peace, it is going to fail you. So we like to focus on what is the true source of peace first, knowing that the peace that Jesus gives, the world cannot give and the world cannot take away. And so when Jesus becomes the source of peace, then it doesn't really much matter the number in the bank account. It just becomes, a good fiscal practice. It really just becomes like, I'm stewarding my finances well by having some set aside for peace of mind, but my true source of peace comes from Jesus alone.
Yeah, that's great. And as you talk about that, I want our listeners to know that you don't, it doesn't have to be called a peace of mind fund for you. I actually have another colleague who loved this idea but wanted to do something that was kind of his own, and so he has what he calls his SWAN fund, which stands for Sleep Well at Night. And so it's the same idea, but it just it can be called anything that you want. It's just what we want to get across for you is that if it's something that allows you to ask the question that's going to actually make a difference for you, then that's for him, does this help us sleep well at night? You can ask yourself that similar question and then name this fund, whatever it is that will make you want to fund it and actually make good decisions around it.
Yeah, I like that one too. And he got the acronym to work, SWAN, right?
Right.
Then you're intrigued. You're like, what is that? A SWAN fund? What?
Yeah.
Sleep well
Right.
at night.
Right. I think it's probably because I said, I'm trying to figure out something fun for this. Like I was going with like, I went with pom pom at one point, like peace of mind. I don't remember what the other POM was, but I'm like, I don't like it. It sounds forced. And so I just left it alone and went to peace of mind. And then, a few weeks later, I think he started playing around and he came up with that. And I'm like, well, I can't take it. It's absolutely yours, but it is a really cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just drives home the point that yours doesn't necessarily need to be peace of mind fund or even the sleep well at night fund, but find the thing that you actually want in your life. Like we want peace of mind, like he wants to sleep well at night, rather than the things that you're trying to avoid. Trying to avoid emergencies. I'm trying to avoid the rainy day fund, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to get into our Ask the Coaches question a little early because it's going to help fuel the conversation around like, okay, but how much should be in this fund? How does somebody know that they got the right amount? That sort of thing.
Okay.
So we had another anonymous post, and this member asked, do any of you have an emergency savings account? And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about it, right? Because that is such the normal language for it. How much do you put monthly toward it? And at what point do you start putting it toward something else? And I thought that was a really insightful question because exactly, are you just going to keep saving money, or at what point do you shift focus and reallocate dollars to do something, that's going to steward those funds better? Mm-hmm. So if I were sitting down with this lady or gentleman, the same way I would with any one of our clients, there's a starter peace of mind fund, something to get you started. And then there's down the road when your financial picture is more the way you want it. Maybe you're looking to eliminate some debt, or maybe you're looking to save for something specific like a down payment on a house or whatever. So there's a later date, that fully funded peace of mind fund. But to get people started, we start off with 25% of your take-home pay. And I love this because this was also a shift, just like the language from emergency fund to peace of mind was a shift. The idea of like a hard and fast $1,000, this 25% of your take-home pay is a shift, and it allows your peace of mind fund to scale with your lifestyle, right? So this allowed me early on to work with a couple of clients who didn't have very large incomes. And so maybe they were only making $2,000 a month. Well, at 25%, it meant having a $500 peace of mind fund. They could do that quickly, and they actually felt good about having $500 saved because that was something they've never had. So 1,000 was a little too much for them, a little too aggressive. 500 felt right. And they felt like, oh, okay, I can do that. And they felt a great sense of accomplishment once they did.
Yeah, that's great. I think on the other side of that, it allows for the recognition that if you are typically making 4,000 would be 1,000, but if you're making $8,000 a month, and you have something happen, chances are that $1,000 is not going to cover that emergency for you. So I think that I love that this is not just a one number or second number, like 500 or 1,000, but it actually is a percentage, which is something that I really appreciate working in because it really does give that grace to people who have weird numbers. It's like there's a recognition, and I like how you said that it scales along with your income.
Yeah. And truth be told, I mean, when I started coaching people, it was, I went with that $1,000 emergency fund because it's very kind of out there in the industry. And time again, my higher income earning clients were like, you're crazy. I already have more than that set aside, and I'm not going to reduce it down to 1,000. And so it took some time to kind of figure out like, what is that sweet spot? What is that comfortable spot for most people? And again, this is not a hard and fast rule. It's just a better guideline in terms of, where should you start? And it really is just the starting point. Because again, I have some clients who, when I first started working with them, I remember this one, she had $20,000 in the bank. She had about $18,000 in debt. And I was like, oh, that's really simple. We write a check tomorrow and you're out of debt and you still have $2,000 to work with. And she's all like, find a different route because that ain't happening.
She's like, find a different route or I'm finding a different coach.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, years of experience and just a number of different situations have really led to, oh, okay, like there's different ways to go about this. And so that gets people started. If you're looking more on the other end of this poster's question where, how much do you put in monthly toward that? And at what point do you start putting it somewhere else? Well, one of the things I like to do with clients is I like to sit down and try to help them fund that within 3 months. And we do everything by pay period. So most people are paid either biweekly or twice a month. So you're looking at least like 6 paychecks, right? So it's, what is the peace of mind fund goal? What is that 25%? Is it, 1,000 for you? Is it $2,500 if you're making $10,000 a month? And so you figure out what it is and you divide it by 6. And so you're contributing that much over 6 paychecks to get funded. If you can fund it faster, great. If it takes a little bit longer, that's okay too. Again, guidelines. But once you're there, once you're to that 25% number, now let's focus on the other financial goals that you have. Are you trying to eliminate debt? Are you trying to save for a very specific purchase? What are the other things you're trying to do with your money? And let's figure out what that is. And once that looks good, now we're going to shift gears to what we call a fully funded peace of mind fund. And At first, I like to say 3 to 6 months of income. Now, again, it's really common to say 3 to 6 months of expenses. But I like to help people deal with like their income, because 3 to 6 months of income means that you have 3 to 6 months of coverage if something were to happen, like work-wise, right?
Yeah.
But I also believe that there's a level that's just too much. So I say 3 to 6 months of income until about $20,000. At $20,000 doesn't mean you can't save more than that. But now I want you to be maybe putting it somewhere other than just a high yield savings account earning 3 or 4%. Like let's get that into a brokerage account. Let's make that money work for you, because that $20,000 is still a significant buffer that would allow you to liquidate your brokerage account if you needed more time. So you could start to use the 20, and if you found out, like, hey, this layoff or this time away from work is longer than I anticipated, well, then you can start liquidating assets.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that, so I call mine our optimal peace of mind fund. It's kind of where
Oh, okay.
it's just a little shorter than fully funded.
Yep.
That's really the only reason. But it's that idea that, I'm going to have that sense of, yeah, this is going to be enough. And in the event that it's not enough, that means there was something absolutely catastrophic. And so we have to make sure that we have other things, other guardrails in place for the catastrophes in our lives. That's where like insurance and stuff comes into play. But yeah, I think that the idea of keeping all of that in somewhere other than just a high yield savings account is not a horrible idea either. And some people might even say they don't feel comfortable keeping that much that's super liquid. They might say, well, we want to have this available, whether it's $20,000 or, $30,000. I know you have a maximum of 20 on that, but it's not about saving less or a maximum of 20,000. It's just saving it somewhere else, right? That's what you were saying there?
Yeah,
okay.
Because if somebody was like, hey, I want to have 30 on hand, it's like, hey, let's just take that other 10 and at least put it in the market and maybe get you some better returns.
Gotcha. Okay. But not in a retirement account, because then you wouldn't have access to it. And that's really the difference there. But some people might be comfortable with just $10,000. That's, like fully liquidated. And then, because so many things, I'm trying to think of something that would cost more than $10,000 that was unexpected. What are some things? And that if it's okay to have this conversation, I think that kind of helps people to really put some realistic numbers in place for themselves. Have you thought of something that's going to be more than $10,000 that you need to have liquid money?
It really typically, like 99% of the time, ties to unemployment, time away from work, right? If I'm laid off, I need to know that I have a cushion. Because unfortunately, we don't know if a layoff is going to last a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or a couple of months. Yeah. And by a couple, I don't even just mean two, right?
Yeah.
So that's usually why the higher end. Other than that, I mean, maybe medical bills, but that's only if you're carrying a very large deductible, because oftentimes, even if you're carrying a deductible, it's like $10,000. So it's looking at things like that. What is your medical deductible? What is your auto deductible? What these things that you might need to bridge the gap between what the insurance is going to pay and what's coming out of pocket.
Yeah.
So to your point, it really isn't. I have a couple who is a high income earning couple, but they also have employment that is about as rock solid as somebody can get. I mean, no employment is like absolutely guaranteed, but they're not going to lose their job anytime before retirement. And so they don't carry more than $10,000 because they know what their deductibles are and that sort of thing. And they know that they don't need coverage for a layoff because that's just not likely to happen.
Yeah. So I feel kind of bad because I think I asked the question in a way that wasn't super clear. So I'm not suggesting that there is not a need for more money. What I'm curious about is the quick accessibility of that money. So, when even if you have a $10,000 deductible, which by the way, I totally do. So I understand that. I wish it was 10,000. It's more like 13 or something like that. But medical bills, while they're there, you can go to the doctor and typically you don't have to pay the $10,000 right there, right? They will maybe take 1,000 or whatever, and then they bill you for the rest. And so all I'm saying is that you don't have to have immediate access to that entire peace of mind fund, because you can typically, even if it takes 2 or 3 days to get money out of a money market account or something like that, you will likely have that time in order to make that happen. That's really all I was talking about.
I got you. Yeah. I think to that point, Maria, it's just about, where do you feel comfortable having that money parked,
Yes.
right? So a high yield savings account, again, while you can get like 3 or 4%, for some people, knowing that they're going to earn 3 to 4% and it's not at risk in the market is just one of those like sensitivity bones that they have that I don't, right? Like I'm fine with $10,000 in a high yield savings account, and then the rest out there being more aggressive, earning better than 4%.
And you're able to absorb some of that risk. If you were to lose some of that, you can kind of watch it and go, oh, I can't lose that much, so I'm going to pull that back out, and knowing what that's for, which is why we also said don't put this in some retirement account, because we want you to have access to it before retirement age and not have all of the fees and penalties and all of that goes along with that. So it's very nuanced. Everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. But I really, really appreciate the guardrails of 25% to start of your income, 25% of your income to start. And then beyond that, to go with 3 to 6 months of expenses of the income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that becomes the challenge of the week for our listeners. The challenge this week is, first of all, I want you to rename your savings account. Like, if you can like nickname it, like go in and rename it to whatever you desire. If you desire peace of mind, if you desire to sleep well at night, if you desire something else, like rename it. And then calculate what is 25% of your take-home pay as your starter fund, and see if there's a difference between what you have in there now and what that number is, and then make a plan for contributing to it over the next 3 months to get it to where it needs to be.
I love it. Challenge accepted.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.